Actually, a lot of the things that we consider to be timeless behaviors, family values, are actually a product of the 16th century, things that still govern our lives today and that we consider to be normal. One of them is the place of women in the household. Now, this is changing. It has been changing since the 1960s, but it was during the Protestant Reformation and its Catholic counterpart that the notion that a man was the head of the household and should be in control of domestic decision-making was new. Prior to this, women had a lot of control over the education of their children, economic decisions, the running of the household, their own behaviors within the household. But one of the watchwords of the Reformation or the Counter-Reformation is control, and control within the domestic sphere, even as well as in the public sphere. And so the fathers of the families start taking on these roles within the household. That was new. Another thing that was new for women was that there was a new ideal of what was the good woman. And a medieval ideal often looked to the Blessed Virgin. So that one of the ways to become an ideal woman in the Middle Ages was to go into a convent because virginity was prized. But going into a convent also gave women a lot of power and independence. Abbesses, the leaders of convents, were often major political players in European politics. So by devaluing the independence of women, even if they were virgins, and instead erecting an idea that the good woman is the good wife, both of these reformations really, again, put in place the importance of obedience to a male figure. So that's one. The other thing is the education of children, which we, again, take for granted. But both Protestants and Catholics emphasize that children need to be indoctrinated into religious education at a very young age. And you know, in the Middle Ages, unless you grew up as a monk or a nun, which some children did, you didn't really have a rigorous intellectual education in a religion. But both Protestant and Catholic children were catechized, were given the tenets of the faith and expected to learn them. There was also a very large emphasis placed on literacy. So the emphasis that we see being placed on education as being a specifically literate type of endeavor is also a product of the Reformation. Something else that we should also point to, though, is, and under this rubric of control, is that both Protestant and Catholic governments start becoming interested in controlling aspects of people's lives that had never been controlled before. Things like basic appetites. Prostitution is outlawed for the first time in the 16th century. It has been subject to regulation. The state has taxed it in antiquity and in the Middle Ages. But the idea that prostitution should somehow be illegal and that men should not have recourse to this, or that women should not have recourse to this career, is a Reformation idea. As is, you know, even things like regulation of drinking and you know, the way that we still want to regulate the substances that people put into their bodies. It would have been unheard of for any government prior to the 16th century to ever want to do such a thing. So again, these are some very basic ways in which we consider those things that we just take for granted as part of what the state should do are really a product of this historical movement.